First, Lamar Jackson named All-Pro over Josh Allen. Now Jackson is a favorite in Orchard Park. Ravens opened as a 1-point dog to the Bills in the divisional round, but that line has shifted and flipped with the Ravens now the favorite. Bills a 1-point home underdog. Back with Joe and Erin. Joe, I'm curious how you feel about this early move in the market.
Kids just got off the bus, so she's preoccupied with that, which means I can freely speak against Buffalo here. I love Baltimore. Love them in this spot. Absolutely love them. Let's just go with the basic preschool analysis. Who's got the better offense? Baltimore. Who's got the better defense? Baltimore. Who's got the better coaching? Baltimore. What does Buffalo do better? I'll wait. If anyone's got an answer, we can go ahead and suss through that.
I think they would say Josh Allen. Do you think they have the better quarterback in Baltimore?
I think if you look at the MVP voting historically, the guys who vote for MVP are the same guys that vote for AP, and Lamar Jackson just won AP first team, which I think is a sign of things to come for the MVP market as well.
What about the playoff failures of Lamar? Does that factor in for you?
Are we worried about
will get to
16
that.
teams versus 1 seeds this year?
I'm just asking.
No, that's the stuff that creates value when everyone in the world thinks exactly the same way.
Okay.
Warren Buffett makes a ton of money because of the very basic idea that everyone's thinking the same way. It's not even a contrarian thought. Like, look at what Lamar Jackson did in that game against Pittsburgh. 15 rushing attempts. 15. The most since when? Week 1 against Kansas City on the road. It is very clear he's aware of the narrative. It's very clear that he's aware of what is at stake for him and his legacy. He and Derrick Henry were unstoppable in this game. They didn't even need to throw the ball. They ran right through Pittsburgh for 299 yards. The passing game was irrelevant in this matchup. So I like Buffalo. They're a great football team, but I'm taking the Ravens. I got in on them early before it switched. It's not a surprise to see Baltimore as a favorite here.
Man, I am torn on this one, and I will say at least I feed a little bit into the world thinking Lamar Jackson has fizzled out in the postseason. I mean, 3-0 in the first games. 4 touchdowns to 1 interception. Come that second game in the postseason, he's 0-2, 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions. He also has the second largest drop-off in terms of QBR right now in the playoffs in the last 20 years. So I think, again, I feel like right now this could go either way. I'm dealing with, me thinking now that Joe's bringing it to my attention how much I think, like everybody else, that Lamar Jackson fizzles out. But, I mean, the Buffalo Bills are still a really good team, and they're playing at home. So I think that's also a really big advantage for them.
Didn't say this was going to be an easy game to handicap or pick. It is 2 of the best teams in the NFL. Let's go back out to Glendale. Big man Stanford Steve, I'm curious your thoughts on this game flipping to now the Ravens being the road favorite.
Yeah, I was extremely impressed with Buffalo yesterday, and I get it. They were a big favorite. They were at home. But how disciplined Josh Allen was in decision-making, not giving Denver a turnover, and then when it came time to pull the trigger on some deep throws, he doesn't. He has to play within the system. We've seen him at times get crushed with turnovers, and I feel way more confident in Josh Allen than I do with Lamar. In this circumstance, we know what each guy has done in the past, but when you look, I was curious to which day this game was going to be. It's going to kind of be like it was yesterday in Buffalo on Saturday, but Sunday's forecast, it's like 9 degrees, chance of snow. I like Josh Allen in those circumstances more than I like Lamar.
See, the thing is, everybody likes Allen. No one's worried about Allen. Allen's never been the problem in the playoffs. It's always everyone around him. It's McDermott, it's the kicker, it's the defense, it's Steph Diggs dropping that huge pass last year. The problem's never been Allen. If we're handicapping Allen, it's irrelevant. The expectation is he plays well. It's his team that lets him down. That's the focal point. Shutting down Denver means nothing when it comes to shutting down Lamar Jackson. What is similar about Baltimore and Denver? Like, literally nothing.
I mean, if the Bills can't stop the run either, that's going to be a problem. I mean, Derrick Henry going for 24 carries, 199 rushing yards. His longest rush in that game was 87. I know we don't really factor in. I mean, that was week 4. It's a long time ago. But if they don't stop the run, I mean, the Bills might be toast. Sorry to the producer.
Steve, what do you have to say in response to those comments?
Well, I'm not going to treat yesterday's win by Buffalo like nothing. The reason Bo Nix was bad is how good Buffalo was on defense, confusing looks. What's Lamar had trouble with? Reading defenses, making precise throws in big spots. Buffalo was tremendous yesterday. They didn't have Milano when they played in Baltimore. We see the difference maker that he is.
All right.
And you like purple. That's probably evident.
Yeah, we have seen Joe rock purple before. Plenty of time, guys, to handicap this game. We'll have a few shows before it kicks off. Regardless who wins that game, they likely see the Kansas City Chiefs. But first, the Chiefs will have to advance past the Texans in the divisional round. Houston got there by hammering the Chargers 32-12 over the wild card weekend. KC will be well rested. Patrick Mahomes sat out week 18. His week 17 game was played on a Wednesday, so it'll be his first action in more than 20 days. Commanders will have played 4 games in that span for perspective. Chiefs laying a bit over a touchdown against Houston. Despite playing a lot of close games this season, the total is low, down at 41.5, lower than any wild card game we saw. And that's been an issue for Kansas City this year, laying a big number. They're 7-0 outright when they've been a favorite of more than a touchdown, yet they're 0-7 against the spread with a 6-point deficit to start the game. So, Erin, the Chiefs are the 1 seed, but this has been a spot where you have bet against them all year long, or if you have, it's been successful. Yeah. Is 7.5 too many to lay?
It's a lot of points, it feels like, but the Chiefs are obviously the better team, and I feel like when we look at the Houston Texans, I mean, they did all they could do to beat the Chargers, and they looked really good in that game, but coming into that game, we were a little bit confused. How are they going to look? Because the offense has not been as great as we were expecting. The one thing the Houston Texans are really good, it's in the first half. They're 14-4 ATS in the first half. I don't think that trend continues. I think the Kansas City Chiefs start this game with rest and are going to be really good in this spot. Again, Kansas City isn't profitable in the first half of games this season, but I don't think that really matters because, again, this is the postseason. They're rested. I think they come out hot. And the Houston Texans, they did just have to play that game. So even though it was at home, now they go on the road, and I do think the Chiefs have the advantage in the first half. So I'd lay the 4.5 points.
How is it that these two met in Kansas City in Week 16? A few weeks ago, they're meeting where they're going to play this weekend. It was Kansas City minus 3.5. And now we're looking at this game. It opens 8.5. It's been bet down to 7.5. So we've already seen Houston money hit the market. How can you go that far? The injury to Tank Dell, which happened during that game? Okay, that's understandable, but is that worth 4 points through the key number of 7? That doesn't make any sense, especially when you're looking at a low total sitting at 42. They're telling you there's going to be a low-scoring game. So if you're Kansas City, to cover this spread, you got to win by 2 scores, all right? Is that offense capable of putting up some big plays? Because you saw Houston's pass defense, and if you weren't familiar with them, they're one of the top 4 units in the NFL. They can also generate a pass rush. How has Kansas City been protecting this year? They've been awful, absolutely awful on the offensive line. So if you can generate a pass rush and you can limit what Mahomes can do in terms of time to get the ball down the field against a really good secondary, you can keep this thing relatively close. And when you go back to that game in Week 16, they lost by 8. Yep. So we're talking about a big adjustment. And this Houston team is on house money. I don't know if that matters to anyone in the handicap, but they've already exceeded expectation beating the Chargers. This game's a free and loose game for them.
All right, I'm curious how Anita feels about this one. Again, we'll reiterate, betting on Kansas City in this spot has been a loser's wager all year long. You like the Chiefs side or the Texans side here?
So I know what you guys are thinking. It's now at 7.5. We know what Anita does, right? She'll buy the hook down, maybe to 7, maybe to 6.5. I'm going to zig when everybody's zagging. I'm going to play alternate line. Why not? Minus 9.5. That's how much confidence I have with this Kansas City Chiefs team. Why? As Joe pointed out, they beat this Houston Texans team back in Week 16. Kansas City offense was able to do it in the air and the ground. Their defense had 2 interceptions. Houston couldn't do anything in the red zone. And this Kansas City defense ended up in the top 5 in the NFL the last quarter of the season. They get Jalen Warren back. He's back there with Trent McDuffie. I said it all season long. This Kansas City team is so lucky, 11-0 in 1-score games. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I think Kansas City is a totally different animal in the postseason. They're looking to become the first team in the NFL to win 3 consecutive Super Bowls. I think they come out on fire. I'll lay the 9.5.
All right, very confident in the Kansas City side. I can't imagine Kansas City losing this game, so I think they're a good teaser option down from 7.5 to 1.5. You can figure out what you want to do with the other leg, but if we get Houston versus the winner of the Ravens-Bills game, I think it's going to be a major disappointment. I can't see Mahomes losing it, so I look at Kansas City, though, maybe not laying the 7.5. Look at that. Oof. It's like a fake phone number on TV, 555. That would be the highest over-under in a playoff game since Super Bowl 55. Fives are wild. That was the Chiefs and the Bucks, if you remember. Erin, high spread, high total. Yeah. What are you thinking here?
I mean, it is a large spread, but I do think the Commanders are live in terms of covering. I don't think they actually end up winning the game, but I wouldn't be surprised if Detroit came out a little bit flat. And also on top of that, their defense just hasn't been that great. More specifically, in the second half of the season, the Detroit Lions are 29th versus the pass. Now, if Jaden Daniels and company can get going just like they did against the Bucs through the air, that could be really important for them to at least be able to put points on the board and hang with this team and cover that spread. We also know they just played the Bucs, and the Bucs in the second half of the season were number one at stopping the run, so they made adjustments and really figured things out. So if they get going through the air, like I mentioned, I mean, they have a shot at covering this spread. Also with the high total, of course, we're going to be looking at some touchdown scores as well, but we'll get to that later in the week.
I mean, the books are giving you the dream teaser scenario here, right? Like, this is sitting out 8.5. Kansas City's sitting 8, now down to 7.5. You can go ahead and play that if you want. It comes down to Detroit's defense, right? Erin makes a great point. They were a mess right up until the last game of the season when it really mattered against Minnesota, really good offense, and then they completely locked them down. So what are we going to get this week? Because if we get anything close to that, this is a rout. If it's the defense we saw in any way, shape, or form prior to that, this is going to be Washington hanging there the whole way. Commander team totals right around 24. I'm looking at that right now. I love the fact that it's Dan Quinn, right? Dan Quinn and Dan Campbell. Those two play loose. Quinn was going on fourth down like crazy last night, somewhat recklessly, if you want to argue. Some might say no. But when you have two ultra-aggressive head coaches like this, you're setting yourself up for a scenario where you could go soaring over some of these totals because of conversions, or if there's failures in the red zone, you end up setting yourself up for an under, and you have a lot of disaster there with the scoring prop. So I think Washington's going to hang some points. That's the initial thought.
Dan Campbell gets a lot of credit for being the most aggressive coach in the NFL, but this year it was Dan Quinn, and it's because his Washington team had, I think, an 80% conversion rate on fourth down. Credit to Jaden Daniels, but he knew his team often got those fourth downs, and it mattered last night against the Bucs. They didn't convert on those fourth downs. They'd been field goals instead of touchdowns, and they'd be at home.
One thing to keep in mind, their conversion rate plus the failure of their opponents they've had, it is insane how great they've run on fourth downs this year. There's a regression coming. Maybe it's next year, but at some point that's going to bottom out and it's going to be a problem.
I want to mention something else. We didn't bring it up in the conversation, but I said it leading up to this conversation. Short turnaround for Washington, playing on Sunday night and then playing on Saturday, whereas the Lions are well rested, and the Lions, of course, are a very physical team.
Yeah.
So consider that with why this has moved so much in Detroit's favor.